Yo guys, Ponchy here, and today I want to show you how to create perfect loops and samples using your Octatrack MK2. Let's go. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and make a new project. Project, change, empty. Just going to name it YouTube YT. Okay. Okay, so basically what we want to do here is we want to set up some through machines so that way we can get audio coming in from whatever it is we want to sample, and then from there we're going to set up the recording so that way we can of course capture the samples, and then I want to show you guys the trick to making it so your loops will be perfect every single time. Your samples will come out the perfect length every single time. So that way you don't have to mess with any cutting or trimming the edges, so that way it's usable in a DAW. You can just transfer them directly to your DAW and start using them to create songs or whatever it is you want to do with your samples. Transfer them to another sampler, whatever it may be. So, first thing let's do is let's set up the through machines. Now, just for this video, I'm going to go ahead and set those up on track 1 and track 5. So, double tap on track 1, press left, and go to through, and then tap on track 5, same thing, press left, go to through. Okay, so now T1 and T5 are both through machines. And the way you can tell that is the little T above the track right there, whereas all the other ones are S by default, which is a static machine. That's just for playing samples. So T machine, through machine, that's for passing audio from an external source. So let's hit T1 and go to the source menu here, and this is where we set up the source, where it's coming from. So in this case, T1, I want to be A and B, tracks A and B in the back here. I have a stereo pair into A and B, and then a stereo pair into C and D. So what you do here is take the A encoder, set that to A and B, and then also a trick here is you want to crank this volume all the way using the B encoder. And then also the level encoder, you want to crank that all the way as well. And then go to T5, do the same thing, except in this case I want the input to be C and D. So go to C and D, crank the level here, the volume, and then also the level. Bam. Okay, now for this to work, we're going to need to set up our Midi as well. So you want your devices to be hooked up via Midi. In this case, I should mention I have the circuit tracks and the circuit rhythm hooked up in the back here, which is why I have my two stereo pairs here. So you're also going to want to hook up the Midi. So I have my Midi out of my Octatrack going into the Midi in of my rhythm, and then my circuit rhythm, that is. And then I have the through of the circuit rhythm going to the Midi in of the circuit tracks. So that way it passes through the clock as well as the ability to play when I press play. So once you have everything hooked up there, you go to Project, go to Midi, go to Sync, and then you want to check Send Transport and Send Clock. So transport is for play. When you press play, they'll all play. Then clock, of course, is to sync up the BPMs of all the machines. So you do need that set up for this sampling to work. So what you could do, if you want to sample a bunch of different machines, what you can essentially do is set up this project as kind of a template, set it all up to this point, and including the recording setup we're about to go over in a second here. Set up this project, and then you can use this as a template for sampling. So then all you would have to do is remove whatever machine it is you have hooked up, remove the inputs, and then remove the MIDI, and then just hook up whatever other machine you want to use. And that way you can just continuously create samples that, you know, over and over using different machines. And then by the time you're done with all of that, you'll have your flash card on your Octatrack full of samples that you can transfer to your computer and to use them in a DAW, or transfer them to other machines and do whatever you want with those samples. So, okay, so we have the MIDI all set up. So if we press play here, you should notice that your other machines start playing as well. However, there is no sound because with a through machine, we need to lay a trig. So let's go ahead and stop that. So with each through machine, there needs to be a trig for the input to come through. So all you do is just lay that on the first step here. And then the same with track 5, because we have 2 through machines. Each one needs its own trig. So now when we press play, these are just the simple patterns that I have on my circuit rhythm and circuit tracks that you can't see on screen. But now we have audio coming through. The next thing we want to do is set up our recording machines, our recording setup. So go to track 1, let's do this one first, and then you want to go to record 1 over here. So hold function, hit record 1. So this is where you choose basically what inputs you want to record. Now there's 2 ways to look at this, so I'll show you the first way. The way it's set up here by default is it's going to record from basically every source, including the main source, which is essentially the master output. So, or in other words, the main out. Whatever is coming out of your main out, it's going to record that as well. It's going to sample that as well. So, as you might guess, we don't want it to record from all those sources at once. So what you got to do is with source 3 there, turn it to the dash so that way it's not recording the main out. And then also with encoder B, we only want it to record inputs A and B. So turn that off as well. And then RLen, that basically stands for how long do you want your loop. So in this case, I only want it to be 32 steps, which is the equivalent of 2 bars, basically. So just a short little loop. And in fact, being as I only have my circuit rhythm and circuit tracks set to just a 1 bar loop, let's just go ahead and set them to 16. So, okay. And then you go to record 2, function record 2. And then F in and F out, that stands for fade. So basically you want to set those to the lowest possible fade. Now the reason for that is it'll help you avoid any clicks or pops that there might be. There shouldn't be any using this method because it should record them perfectly, but it's good practice to do that to be safe. So we have the recording set up for track 1. We need to go over to track 5 and do the exact same thing. So let's go back to recording 1. In this case, I only wanted to record inputs C and D, so I'm going to go ahead and take those off there. And then recording length, go down to 16. Now I'm going to go over to recording setup 2, set those fades to the minimum possible fade. So now, one thing I forgot to mention with track 1 is we are going to set a recording trig. So the reason we do that is so it starts recording right on step 1. So in the recording setup 1 menu, I'm on track 5 right now, you go ahead and hit the record button, and this takes you to the recording trig view, basically, so you can view your recording trigs. Now, we want to create what's called a one-shot trig, meaning it only trigs once, otherwise it would record every single time the pattern restarted. So the way to set a one-shot trig rather than a normal trig is you hold function and then hit whichever trig you want to create a one-shot trig. So function and 1. So it'll be yellow instead of red. That indicates that it is a one-shot trig. And then also go over to track 1, lay one of those as well. And you might have noticed at the top here that it flashed all of these flashed red for a second. Now, the reason they flashed red is because those are actually the inputs that it's going to record. However, if you hold this trig down, you'll notice that they're all red. So A and B, it's going to record. C and D, it's going to record, as well as the internal, which is basically the same as the main out. However, if you look on the setup screen over here, it has in C and D and source 3 highlighted, but like we showed before, we removed those from being recorded. So there's, like I mentioned before, there's two ways to look at which sources you want to record. You can actually come over here and then just press these to get rid of those sources so it doesn't record them. Or you can do what I showed you earlier, which is to turn those off anyway. Now, you definitely want to make sure that you do that right, because basically what ends up happening is it'll record the main out, basically the master track. You can look at it like that. And then what you'll end up with is your, like track 1, for example, if that's only your circuit rhythm or whatever machine it is you want to record, it'll also pick up the other through track that you have. So basically your loops won't be, they'll have both of the tracks recorded rather than just one, which is what we want. So hope that wasn't too confusing, but just take my word for it that you don't want it to record from source 3, and you also, of course, don't want it to record both of your machines at the same time if you're sampling from one machine or two machines. If you're only sampling from one machine, then it doesn't really matter that you have these selected, because you'll only be getting input from one machine. However, it does matter that you don't have source 3 selected ultimately. So because that will mess with your samples if you want to get clean samples, so that don't have any other extra noise or anything. So anyway, again, hope that wasn't too confusing. Let me know down below if you have any questions about that. I will clarify that in the comments if you need me to. So again, we got to do this same thing with track 5. So you can hold down the one-shot trig that we have here, and just to be safe, I'll show you. In this case, this is inputs C and D, so I want to remove A and B, and then also the internal input. So now we have it set up, finally, to where it's only going to record, track 1 is only going to record inputs A and B, and then track 5 is going to record inputs C and D. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how it is you record exactly. So again, we have those one-shot trigs laid down there. So the way to enable the one-shot trigs is you press yes. You might have pressed yes in your adventures in the Octatrack accidentally, and you'll see that it says arm all. So what that does in this case is it arms our one-shot trigs. The way to disarm them, of course, is the no button right here. So now you know what the arming does. So we want to arm our one-shot trigs, and then all we have to do from here is press play, and what that's going to do is our one-shot trig is right here on the first step, so it's going to immediately start recording. And then what is the Octatrack going to do? It's going to keep looping that bar over and over. However, it's going to stop recording after the 16 steps because of the the length that we set in the recording setup. And then so the second time around, it's not going to record because that one-shot trig has already been used up, and then all of a sudden you have a perfect loop, a perfect sample. So, by the way, I use the terms interchangeably. Sample, I suppose, is the correct word for it, but you know, you can also look at them as loops. All I'm referring to is the fact that the Octatrack is capturing audio and turning it into a file. So that's all we're trying to do here today. So let's go ahead and press play. And what you want to look for is above or next to the through tracks here, the T, there's going to be a plus sign, and that indicates that it is recording. So arm the tracks, press play. Now if you saw it, it was really quick. The plus appeared, and then once the 16 steps was over with, then the plus disappeared, which means that it stopped recording. So now you have two samples on each track, or a sample on each track that you can save, and then it'll be on your flash card, and then you can do whatever you want with that. Put it on your computer or anything else. Now that we have those samples recorded, of course we want to save them. So let's go to function record 3 for track 1, and then you get edit this recording, save all recordings, or go to memory config. So let's go ahead and just save this recording. So I'm just going to go ahead and name this Circuit 1. Okay. And then it'll ask you if you want to assign it to this track, a free flex track, or a free static track. Let's just go ahead and assign it to a free flex. Okay. So then what we can do is, for example, just hit track 2 here, and I want to just change that to a flex track just temporarily so I can show you guys where it goes. And then if you look right there, we have circuit 1. So if you press function and yes, we can preview the sample. So there you have it. That's my beat that I had coming from my circuit rhythm, and it's a perfect loop. It's only one bar. So now what you can do is you can send that to friends, put it on your computer, and it'll automatically, you don't have to trim it or anything, which to me is really nice. Like the setup of the Octatrack, it is a little confusing at first. It does take some time, but again, once you have that project, once you have this project set up, all you have to do is disconnect your outputs of your other machines, disconnect the Midi, and then hook up another machine to that, and you're good to go. You know, you don't have to worry about you know, setting up the recording and the through track and everything over again, because it's basically ready to go. Hope that helps you guys. Hope that wasn't too much. Again, leave comments down below if you have questions. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there so as not to make it super long, but unfortunately the setup for that is a little intensive at first, but you know, once you have it set up, it's really not too bad to just go in there and sample things one after the other, and that way you can create just a whole library of your own loops and your own samples just with, you know, with not that much time really. So hope that helps you guys. See you in the next video.